Congrats everyone, we've made it halfway through 2021, so obviously we're all thinking, how can we throw some more money at Tim Cook? Well, that's what we're talking about in today's video, because we've got iPhone season coming out at the very end of this quarter, and now Digitimes is telling us to expect maybe MacBook season as well. Let's begin. So obviously there were a ton of analysts and leakers all thinking that new MacBook Pros would be unveiled at Quadruple UDC last month. That didn't happen, and we were all in the fetal position crying ourselves to sleep for a couple weeks. So now we're all asking ourselves, well, when, okay? Because very reliable leaker Tim Cook did say last year that this whole Apple Silicon transition would take 2 years. We have now surpassed the 1 year mark since they made that announcement, which now means that Apple has less than 1 year to complete the transition for the rest of the Mac lineup, and other than the M1 chip, we haven't gotten anything. Now, they've made very good use of the M1 chip, putting it in the MacBook Air, the Mac Mini, the base model MacBook Pro, and now the 24-inch iMac, so we're kind of hoping that within the next few months we could see where else the Apple Silicon team can go. All of us kind of expecting it to be called the M1X chip, because that's typically how the naming scheme has gone for their iPhone and iPad chips. But simultaneously, we've also seen reports of Apple releasing an M2 chip, which would not be faster than the X series, but simply be improving on the M1 and still offering great battery life and great performance, but maybe just a little bit better graphics. And that's not really meant to go in high-end Pro machines. This is just an updated chip for the Mac Mini, the MacBook Air, and all that. But I have to agree, if they unveiled an M2 chip later this year alongside an M1X, marketing-wise, you know, the higher number is probably gonna confuse people. So maybe they just go straight to M2X, confusing everyone from the beginning, but I know M2 is supposed to work on this slightly different architecture, so it wouldn't make sense for them to call M1X M2X or whatever they end up calling it. They might throw out the letter M entirely and just decide for the Pro class hardware they're gonna brand it P or, I don't know, something else. But what I mainly wanted to focus on in today's video is what Digitimes is talking about, who has a bumpy track record. They're not the most reliable in the world, but they're also not the most wrong, so essentially if Digitimes says something, it's like flipping a coin. But they're anticipating that the first mini LED MacBooks with the updated Apple Silicon are going to be unveiled at the very end of this quarter, which is in fact September. This sounds very fascinating to me because I don't know if you guys know this, but I was not a huge fan of Apple having all these tiny mini events throughout last year. In fact, the last one was literally 40 minutes, and they were out of there in under an hour, and there was no new designs to talk about. It was literally just a 40-minute event for the M1 chip, which I agree, the M1 is a big deal. It's very powerful and it's a tremendous step forward for Apple, but at the same time, 40 minutes and no new designs of any kind to unveil. I just felt like a weird way to unveil a chip, because it was 40 minutes of 3 times faster, 4 times faster, 5 times better, 5 times better, and until we actually got the M1 chip, it was hard to appreciate its capability and its power, because people just telling you something is fast is not that interesting. You want to experience it, you want to see it go fast. And the main reason I'm excited about this report and kind of hoping it's right, but expecting it to be wrong, is because I want more Apple events to be eventful, okay? I'm not in favor of having 6 or 7 Apple events that take place throughout the year, and every single one of them only has like one kind of cool thing. We didn't need like one AirTag event. Okay, done. Okay, another event for just the iPad Pro. Okay, good, done. All right, now let's have another event just for the 24-inch iMac. That's not my cup of tea, because I think that Apple events, sort of like holidays, should be special. If we had Christmas 3 or 4 times a year, it suddenly would kind of lose a lot of its wow factor. Same thing if you had a birthday several times throughout the year, you wouldn't really find it as exciting, you know? It would just be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's March again. Oh, right, it's July, we gotta celebrate that now. And I'm totally fine if Apple wants to just have a few site refreshes throughout the year, because I get there's more announcements that you want to make throughout the year, more than just at 2 different times. But if Apple wants to have a major event just in June for the developers, and also just in September for a lot of their biggest, most exciting hardware, I'd be fine with that, because site refreshes, I think, are a great way to provide spec boosts. You know, I'm not in favor of site refreshes unveiling new designs. I still feel weird about AirPods Pro and AirPods Max not having their own events. But if you're just gonna slap a new chip in something, and this new chip is slightly faster and slightly better, but there's no new redesign to unveil or talk about, then yeah, just make a newsroom post. You don't have to make a big deal about it. Just be like, hey everyone, by the the way, this computer's faster now, or we have a new offer, or this is a new price, or something like that. Sure, I'm totally fine with newsroom posts, but getting people excited, you know, sending out the invites and telling people we're gonna live stream this one very special keynote and we're gonna change everything at this high-speed, one more thing, time flies event. That's what gets people excited, and every single time we get a bunch of people saying, oh, I bet AirPower's coming back, or a bunch of people saying, oh, Apple glasses, I bet that's gonna be the one more thing, and it's that kind of speculation that's nonstop and never-ending that makes me want to just, oh gosh, Apple, can you just tell us what to expect at this event? I wouldn't even mind if they were like, hey, we're having an event next week and it's just about iPhones, okay? Please, don't expect anything more than that. You know what? Even if Apple disclosed that at the invitation, people would still think there would be surprises. Oh well. But what I love the idea of is having one more event this year in September that is just absolutely jam-packed with hardware. So I thought it was bizarre for the longest time to imagine MacBook Pros and potentially an M1X Mac Mini coming out alongside the iPhone, because in typical Apple history, they would like to separate those two, right? The September event is usually for the everyday consumers who are interested in iPhones and Apple Watches, and perhaps we'd get AirPods 3 at this event as well. Lots of analysts saying to expect the 3rd gen AirPods in the 3rd quarter. But then MacBook Pros with the M1X chip and everything, those are like a different demographic. That's a different audience of people that are interested in professional grade hardware, and it doesn't feel like in most recent history Apple would want to unveil, you know, an iPhone alongside a Pro tool for the Mac users. That's typically not something that gets announced simultaneously, which is why if you're asking for my prediction, I don't think this is right. I think this is going to be one of those times Digitimes ends up being a little bit off, and I do think we could get an event in October. That's something Apple has done lots of times for Pro hardware, whether it's iPad Pros or new MacBook Pros or especially redesigned MacBooks they've done in October events in the past, usually around a month after the iPhone event. And because there appears to be supply chain problems with mini LED and there's a chip shortage and everything, it makes total sense to me that they would want to have their big iPhone event in September and then have their MacBook Pro event in October. That just falls in line more with what Apple statistically has done in the past. But at the same time, as a fan, I want the M1X chip to come out as soon as possible, because I feel like it's been far too long and I'm tired of waiting. I want to see how much better Apple Silicon can get. I want to do the Geekbench tests, I want to do the export tests, and I want to see these redesigned MacBooks come out. So if anything results in those M1X MacBooks coming out sooner rather than later, I'm pumped, because if they do come out in September, that means we're only 2 months away technically. And also that sounds like an amazing event, right? We get a whole probably hour or more of Apple just talking about the new iPhones, and hopefully this year it's about how they have 120 Hz and now the true depth camera system is a little narrower than before. They've got these updated ultra wide cameras, they got better battery lives, and they still have stupid lightning. I'm never gonna win that one, but still at the same time it would be an exciting event just to have new iPhones, a redesigned Apple Watch too. That's been rumored for a long time. If we get the Series 7 with the squared off design, and hopefully this could be the first event they start actually unveiling AirPods with, so Generation 3 AirPods have better battery life and the updated design, and they have a reasonable starting price and all that. And then they talk about all that stuff, and on top of that, they're ready to drop M1X MacBooks. We get the 14-inch mini LED variant and the 16-inch variant, and they have a slightly tinkered chassis. They bring back the SD card slot, the HDMI port, they have 1080p webcams, and they have the fastest Apple Silicon in the world. Who knows, even throw in an M1X Mac Mini while we're at it. That just sounds so amazing, because I like events that are like non-stop, there's not much fluff, and they just have so much stuff to talk about. That's why, like, post-pandemic, Quadruple UDC of 2020 is still my favorite event they've had, because it was just non-stop and there wasn't much fluff and they had so much to talk about. I want to have that type of event, except just with hardware, where we're not ending each event going, oh, is that it? Are they done? I was hoping they would talk about this thing, but, you know, in the leak community and covering Apple rumors, that's kind of inevitable, especially when we're talking about products that might be a year or 2 years away. We're always going to be wanting more, always going to be expecting Apple to have a one more thing, when in reality, that's not what happens every event. But I'm trying to remain hopeful here, because I could totally imagine Apple wanting to get these M1X Macs out as soon as possible, so they decide it's worth unveiling them alongside the iPhone, because they know iPhone event is going to bring a lot of viewers and a lot of attention, and if all those viewers find out about these new MacBooks that are more expensive than the M1 Macs, Apple can sell a lot of them. They're going to have a lot of eyes on them. So I would be in love with the idea of dumping everything at one event, although I will agree it's probably not what's going to happen. Doesn't sound sound like Apple in the past, and it's more likely, especially after last year, that they would want to separate these events and spread them out a little bit more. That way, the iPhone has plenty of time to shine and has lots of attention drawn towards it, and the MacBook Pros don't steer away from that. But I'm obviously super interested in what you guys think is going to happen. Are you hoping M1X comes out as soon as possible, or do you think it's unreasonable to assume it come out before October? Feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Sheep here. We'll see you guys in the next one.